So we're going to go ahead and start recording now. So anything you say from this point forward will be on digital at some point, but we have agreed that we will provide the video to the Admiral's PAO for review prior to posting it on our website. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Rear Admiral Blake Converse is currently the Commander of Submarine Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. He's a native of Pennsylvania and a 1987 graduate of Penn State with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering. He also has a Master's of Science degree in Space Systems Engineering and Applied Physics from the Naval Postgraduate School. His career as a nuclear submarine warfare officer includes assignments aboard Lampon, Olympia, and as XO of the Minneapolis-St. Paul. He commanded USS Louisiana from 2006 to 2009 and commanded Submarine Squadron 6 from October 2012 to 2014. Hence the interest from the Pacific Northwest chapter. Ashore, he was the radiological controls officer, staff officer on COMSUBPAC, his special assistant to the commander, U.S. Joint Forces Command, deputy commander, Sub-Squadron 17, and he was the PCO course instructor at Naval Reactors Headquarters and SubPAC Chief of Staff. As a flag officer, he served as director, Joint and Fleet Operations, U.S. Fleet Forces Command, and Commander Subgroup 9 in Silverdale, Washington. His personal decorations include Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit, 4 awards, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, 4 awards, Joint Commendation Medal, Joint Achievement Medal, Naval Commendation Medal, Naval Achievement Medal, 3 awards, and various unit awards. In 2008, he was awarded the Rear Admiral Jack N. Darby Award for Inspirational Leadership and Excellence. Rear Admiral Converse, thank you for being our speaker, and we're looking forward to hearing the view from Hawaii.
All right, can you hear me? Please give me a thumbs up, Bruce. All right, I got it. So first, thank you for that introduction, and it was glowing. The most significant accomplishment of my career is marrying my wife, Amy. The second most significant is somehow managing to get assigned as SubPAC here in Hawaii. There are 2 exceptional Navy ports to be stationed in the drive submarines. One of them is San Diego, and the other one's right here in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So I feel blessed. Hey, I'd like to thank Becky and Patrick Friedman for the leadership up there in San Diego also, and Becky for your work in supporting our spouses in the community.
I think we just lost the Admiral, so hopefully he will be rejoining us shortly, I'm sure.
Sorry about that. Am I back online?
You are.
Great. Sorry, we had some problems with our Wi-Fi here, and you'll understand when I tell you where I'm at. I am actually speaking to you from Lockwood Hall Skipper's Lounge. Many of you may have probably been here. It's a small luggage closet in the back of the Clean Sweep Lounge, which is historic and traces its roots back to many action summits that occurred during World War II over at Lockwood Hall here at the bar. The Queen Sweep Lounge kind of went dormant for a while and was brought back into existence in 1999 when I was here working for Admiral Konechny. And he was SubPAC. He restored it and established it as a historical landmark. And now we get to introduce all the next generations of submariners to our World War II legacy. In fact, Behind, or actually in front of me, as I look forward, are the pictures of 198 Navy commanding officers during World War II that earned the Navy Cross. And behind me on the wall, and you can see some of those pictures above my head, are all of our skippers during World War II who earned medals of honor for their valiant service during that war. Includes the likes of John Cromwell, Sam Dealey, Gene Fluckey, Howard Gilmore, Dick O'Kane, George Street, and Red Ramage, names that every one of us submariners recognize. I think San Diego and Pearl Harbor share a huge and rich history with submariners. Generation of our Navy sailors, including me, have cut their teeth in submarine operations from these ports. When I entered the submarine force back in the late 80s, we were still in the Cold War, and nearly 100 submarines were conducting national missions, shadowing Russian warship task groups, and hunting down submarines across our oceans. We faced down a very powerful and dangerous enemy at that time, and we dominated. We had a clear sense of purpose in our operations. We had a deep sense of pride in that the work that we were doing mattered dearly to our national security. So as I look to the West today, it's pretty apparent to me that we've kind of come full circle. I again see a very dangerous adversary. In fact, I see two. And as we study the growing capabilities of China and Russia in the sea, in the air, in the space, and in the cyber domains, it becomes increasingly apparent it's going to be our submarine force and our stealth forces that we partner with that are going to be the first to the fight. And any victory we achieve, if we go to war today in a maritime conflict, will depend on our ability to deny the adversary the use of the seas, and our ability to set the conditions for sea and air control and to protect the flow of joint forces to the fight. Those are the tasks that we've set out for ourselves. And when I look in the eyes of our sailors who return from Westpac deployment today, and I'm sure Patrick is seeing this in USS Scranton, after tough extended deployments against very capable Chinese, Russian, and even Iranian navies, and certainly in the face of the challenges with COVID, I see huge pride in the work that we're doing, pride in the recognition our sailors have that what they're doing again matters gravely to our national security. So where do we stand today in our war-fighting readiness? My assessment is that if I was directed to send our submarine force to war today against China or Russia in a major maritime conflict, our forces would continue to dominate that fight across the ocean, certainly in the littoral seas. We continue to hold the best submarines, the finest sensors and weapon systems, and the most experienced and well-trained crews. Look into the future, I see many challenges in maintaining our undersea dominance. Challenges in our capacity, the sheer number of submarines and ASW-capable warships that we can produce compared to what the Chinese can produce, for example. Challenges in technology and electronic warfare and unmanned systems and cyber and space, and challenges to our race to apply artificial intelligence, machine learning, even simple data analytics to the interconnection, the analysis, and the rapid improvement of all those other capabilities that we're developing. Frankly, we have some work to do in all of those areas. In order to address those challenges, Admiral Caudle and I recently released our Commander's Intent 3.0. It's available and unclassified other than the annexes. And it's purpose-built to guide the submarine force leadership and provide a clear direction to our force operations through lines of effort. There's a lot of goals and a lot of plans of attack within the Commander's Intent 3.0, but I want to summarize it in three of our concepts of operation. The first is supporting and improving our nation's strategic deterrence posture. Today, as you know, our SSBNs operate at sea and continuously carry 70% of our nation's accountable nuclear warheads. Those SSBNs provide a credible and very impressive, powerful nuclear deterrent force that will most certainly survive an adversary's first strike, and we can strike back with overwhelming force. But deterring strategic war isn't just about nuclear strikes. It's also about putting forward such a powerful, well-trained and capable conventional force that at any given moment, China or Russia makes the calculus that today is not a good day to test the resolve of the US of A. It's about us providing our senior leadership, civilian and military, with the options to stop an adversary in their tracks before we ever get to war or before a conventional force goes nuclear. And with our submarine forces' stealth, our strike capability, and a very close partnership that we've actually been expanding on significantly with our special forces, the submarine provides those wide range of conventional deterrence options. We call them flexible deterrence options. So I think we're very powerful and strong in that area. The second concept I'd like to talk to you about is integrating our undersea combat power within the joint force. If we're engaged in major naval combat with China, for example, we're going to have to be fighting in close coordination with our joint partners to establish sea control and bring the full power of the Navy, air, and land forces to the fight. We simply don't have enough bullets or submarines to go it alone. We have to be ready to use the unique capabilities that we, the undersea force, brings to the fight. Anti-submarine warfare, ASUW, strike, certainly Navy special warfare, and offensive mining, which, by the way, we're recapitalizing to a large degree to enable joint access. And then the last concept that we talk about in Commander's Intent 3.0 is our ability to leverage our stealth, our endurance, and our exceptional communications and sensor suites to enable all domain access. It was former Secretary of Defense James Mattis who said, hey, if the submarine force doesn't win the undersea battle, the rest of the joint force may never make it to the fight. And I've heard that repeated time and time again by other secretaries of defense and even the chief of staff of the Army, among many. As conflict breaks out, it's going to be our submarine force that flushes en masse to the Western Pacific. They'll be the first to the fight with the mission to deny the adversary use of those seas. And as that conflict then shifts and our sea denial efforts are successful, we're going to be shifting towards a sea control role. And our submarines will then be forced to work seamlessly with the joint force to enable sea, air, and space control. That's the all domain access that we're talking about. Now, there's many other points in Commander's Intent 3.0, and I'm not going to take the time to break it down today. But I'd like to drill in a couple few concepts or challenges that I think we're going to face in the next several years with the introduction of new technology, specifically fixed and mobile unmanned systems. You may ask, hey, why are we focusing on unmanned systems when we got to just build a lot of submarines? Well, I'll tell you, I see unmanned systems as a huge enabler to bridge the gap as we up our production rate of Virginia-class submarines and then eventually a next-generation submarine. We simply can't build submarines fast enough to give us the lethality we need from the undersea domain with those platforms alone. We need to expand the reach and lethality of each one of our submarines. And fixed and mobile undersea systems are critical enabling capabilities to do that. They enable maneuver warfare from the undersea. And by mobile systems, by the way, I'm referring to unmanned underwater vehicles, remotely operated vehicles, even unmanned aircraft, which we today operate from our submarines. And by the fixed systems that are unmanned, I'm talking about things like SOSUS arrays, systems on the seabed or under the sea. These capabilities are relatively mature to a larger degree, especially in the fixed systems. We have fixed and mobile undersea surveillance systems today. We're experimenting with and actually operating, in many cases, small and medium unmanned and remotely operated systems from our submarines, from our undersea rescue systems. Certainly other branches of the Navy also use these. And those capabilities, when you compare them to the cost of a submarine, are pennies on the dollar. They make substantial changes in our capabilities and our reach on our submarines, and they increase our lethality, but they don't replace a submarine. In the near term, they will give us the bridge in lethality as we build up our submarine force. And I think of the value of a fixed SOSUS array covering strategic choke points day and night versus the cost of trying to put 2 or 3 SSNs to patrol that entire choke point. Certainly you can see the cost calculus there. The testing, submarine integration, and ramp up to full production of small and medium unmanned systems is achievable, and it's something we've been working really hard at. We want to down select to a standardized system for our small and medium unmanned underwater vehicles. And we want them to be modular enough that we can swap out the packages shipboard. And maybe it's going to be a decoy today, maybe it's going to be a comms node tomorrow, maybe it's going to provide us a lethal capability or a surveillance capability in the next day. And they need to be rechargeable as well, because I can't afford to take up every one of my torpedo tube stows with a UUV. I need as many bullets as I can on every fast attack submarine when I go into the fight. And then if we can leverage the SSN's command and control capability, sensor systems, and comm packages, it frees the unmanned system vendor to deliver a range of cost-effective small and medium UAV packages that will fit into those, form fit for the specific missions. And then what kind of missions am I talking about? Near-term focus is increased situational awareness and lethality. Consider this. Think about an old age challenge of potentially mined waters. Now imagine having an unmanned underwater vehicle that can swim out from the submarine, map out that bottom minefield, return that information to the submarine. Or picture this, a submarine deploying UAVs as a flying periscope, able to dramatically extend my fast attack submarine's organic sensor range, provide target quality sensor data back to the submarine or to a third party, enabling harpoon and maritime strike missile engagements. You've seen some of the information about the Marine Corps interested in getting into the anti-ship cruise missile launch capability. Well, maybe we can provide a third party targeting for their Navy strike missiles or their maritime strike Tomahawk missiles or whatever they're going to employ. So there's a lot of opportunities there using the submarine as the platform, using the submarine certainly in some cases as the sensor and shooter, but maybe just as the sensor to provide third-party targeting to the joint force in other situations. Another element to a UUV's lethality is the ability to detect, assess, and catalog seabed and subseabed targets that enables detailed target analysis and development. I talked about, some of these options that we provide for deterrence, flexible deterrence options to the commanders. Well, subseabed mapping and seabed mapping allows us to identify those targets and then propose lethality options that our UUVs or our submarines or other systems can do to get at those. And then once we've identified those targets, we're going to need the unmanned systems or remotely operated systems to deliver kinetic and non-kinetic kill options. And we're experimenting with many options in those areas. Consider a possibility of not just being able to avoid the mine with our shipboard sensors and our UUVs, but being able to reach out with a remotely operated vehicle that will destroy or inert that mine. Now we've not just enabled that submarine to get through that minefield, but we've enabled our surface forces to also drive through there because we provide them a key route. We need unmanned systems that can also serve as decoys to improve our survivability of a fast attack submarine. We have to recognize that our only protection is not stealth. We can also use maneuverability and deception, and we're going to have to use that in the high-end fight, especially in a fight against a very capable ASW adversary in the future. Another defining challenge for the submarine force is expanding and refining our ability to coordinate with the joint forces. I think you'll see that as a recurring theme that both Admiral Caudle and I talk about a lot. When you consider that our adversaries have the ability to degrade or deny our satellite reconnaissance and communication systems, and probably more so in the future, I see a number of valuable roles that the submarine force can provide to the joint force. Given the proliferation of A2AD, anti-access, area denial, stuff, which by the way, the submarine force is largely immune to, but the rest of our force is not. We have the ability to play the role of the insider in that. We have the ability to get in close, strike the enemy's A2AD network, kick in the door for the rest of the joint force and provide them access. We can also provide a common operating picture and forward targeting to other platforms, as I've discussed, enhancing their lethality and the lethality of the joint force. Those efforts require secure, reliable, and fast undersea and satellite comms capabilities, significant redundancy because we don't know what's going to be attacked and what's going to be available. Required improved navigation capabilities, precise navigation and timing through jam-resistant GPS or other capabilities. and the ability to share real-time targeting data across many systems at various classification levels. We're working on things in each one of those areas. I'm going to shift gears now and talk about another challenge for a submarine force, and that's in our shipbuilding and depot repair capacity. Very concerning today, and as we increase our fast attack submarine force structure over the next several decades, it will become a crisis without dedicated action. Frankly, we won the Cold War without ever having to fight a high-end maritime war precisely because we made the necessary investments back then in the shipbuilding and ship repair industry. Those investments ensured that every single day, USSR at that time would conclude that the devastating cost of conflict in a maritime fight with the US was not worth the risk. The importance of that calculus, I think, rings even more true today. US submarine force peaked in the 80s at 102 fast attack submarines. Today, we have just 50. And that number is probably going to stabilize, if not drop by 1 or 2. We think we're on a path to stabilize that at about 50, frankly, with recent budget decisions to refuel some of our newer 688s, but we'll see where we're at. In 1981, the Navy operated 12 submarine tenders. Today, we have 2. We haven't built a submarine tender since 1978. At one time during the Cold War, we had 24 active P3 squadrons plus 12 in reserve, each with 12 aircraft. Today, we have 12 P8 squadrons, and each only has 6 aircraft. In '92, we operated 19 surtask ships in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In fact, in 1989 alone, we built 6 Tago ships. Today, we have a total of 5. We haven't built a surtask ship since the Impeccable 28 years ago. At our high point in 1970, we had 22 fixed undersea surveillance or SOSUS stations. Today, 2 remain. The facts are similarly concerning when you take a look at our nuclear submarine maintenance capacity. At the start of the Cold War, with our shipyards still at peak World War II capacity, the Navy operated at 11 public yards. In '74, that went down to 8 public yards, with new ship construction having transitioned to the private yards. And fast forward 30 years to today, we have 4 public yards, all of which are over 100 years old, with Norfolk being over 250 years old. Now, obviously, that's a disturbing picture. I would argue that overall, the operational impact today is not quite as dismal as that would paint. We have an exceptional advantage in the quality of the submarine sensors and weapon systems, and certainly in our operational training and experience that we bring to bear when we go to fight. But we're going to need something more than steady as she goes if we want to preserve that undersea advantage. As we seek to once again increase our undersea force structure, we're going to need to expand our public and our private shipyard capacity and the vendor industrial base and supply chains to provide the parts that are crucial to building new submarines and maintaining our existing submarines. We need a concerted effort to increase performance and capacity. We simply can't have SSNs sitting idle for months and even years in some cases, as we're experiencing today, waiting for a depot maintenance period to start because we don't have the capacity at our public yards. And we need to deliver submarines from depot maintenance availabilities on time and in great material condition, especially over the next 10 years as our SSN inventory sits at this historic low. To do that, we need to resource NAVSEA to have the capacity to manage public and private depot availabilities effectively. And we need to resource those shipyards. When we designed the Seawolf class submarine, NAVSEA headquarters had 1,300 seasoned engineers, supported by over 36,000 scientists and engineers in laboratories and warfare centers. The EDO community alone was 1,400 folks strong. By 2002, NAVSEA headquarters reached a low of 265 engineers by comparison, and the warfare centers have been cut in half. EDO community was down to 800, and even soup shift staffs have been significantly reduced. Now, I'm not saying we need NAVSEA to be designing SSNX. I think we've stepped away from that, but we do need industry, academia, and government working together to meet the challenges we face, from basic submarine-related R&D to backshift trade supervision to NUCON, doing it effectively and competently. To do that effectively, we need a properly resourced NAVSEA organization with a capacity to manage that effort. I think we're on the right path with that. Columbia has re-enabled redeveloping competency in submarine and strategic operations design, and we've seen some really good progress in our supply chain management, and we're working on a number of lines of effort to improve that. There's a number of things. I'm not going to talk about all the other things we're working on to improve our depot maintenance capability, but you can see the concerns, and you should know that it's a priority for Admiral Caudle and I, as well as Admiral Galinas at NAVSEA. The final challenge I'd like to talk to you about, and I'll close with this, is a perpetually difficult one and a challenge to leadership everywhere. That's the growth and development of the next generation of warfighting sailors, especially our high-performing junior officers. Life as a submarine officer has always been challenging, and these days are no different. But this profession is also incredibly rewarding, something I think many of us can attest. We need the next generation of sailors, men and women, to have a good perspective on those challenges and the rewards of the silent service and the value proposition of a very exciting and dynamic career that this offers. The Navy Submarine League has recently established a mentor program for active duty officers, and I'm pretty excited about the prospects of that program in enabling and guiding our community through a very challenging set of career milestones, and even in their transition at the end of their service. But beyond mentorship and guidance and the standard methods of leadership, there's one piece that we've really been emphasizing within our active duty submarine force that I'd like to talk about, and that's competition and training. Submarine forces for years has been using computerized trainers to exercise their crews. But even just 5 to 10 years ago, our trainers had some pretty significant limitations and very basic scenarios. And he simply wasn't good enough to enable us to certify our submarine crews on those trainers to a large extent. The resolution and fidelity on the acoustics was low, on the optics was low, didn't have the same builds as what we were seeing on our high-end submarines. Well, I can tell you that's changed significantly. Our modern trainers in every one of our fleet concentration have incredibly realistic interfaces, nearly perfect emulations of our control room, of our sonar, our fire control, our ship control, and all the auxiliary sensors and capabilities we bring to bear, including our comm suites. We can generate in our trainers today surface action groups of over 20 warships, all maneuvering independently, a number of submarines, all with weapon systems that very closely emulate adversary weapons, with over 100 interfering merchants and trawlers, a full range of advanced countermeasures that those systems can apply, all operating in an environment and bathymetry that maps anywhere we want to operate our submarines today in the real world. East China Sea, South China Sea, the Philippine Sea, the Arabian Gulf, we can put them in that environment. And the acoustics and the bathymetry and the radar operations, it all performs very similar to what they're going to see. In fact, the fidelity of our trainers today are so good that we do our ASUW final warfighting certifications in those trainers, because to build a scenario at sea and get enough surface ship support to put a 20 ship SAG together and put 100 interfering fishing vessels and merchants out there is impossible. But I can do that in the trainer, and I can run the scenario, and I can run it 3 or 4 times to exercise the ship and have them able then to go out and be ready to do that in combat. The other benefit of these advanced trainers is direct competition between different submarine watch teams. I can actually now hook up these trainers and pit the USS Scranton there in Point Loma against USS Greenville down here in Pearl Harbor, drop them both into a real life scenario, have surface action groups that they're supposed to attack. They can go sub on sub. I can make one of them look like a Shang or an Akula or whatever other submarine and have them attack each other, or have them both team up in a wolf pack and go after an adversary surface action group. It's a great way to build operational judgment, to hone individual and team skills, and to drive home the fact, especially when we're doing this sub-on-sub competition, that you're going against a thinking, aggressive adversary. And the only true metric in warfighting success is whether you kill that other sucker before he kills you. And your grade on your most recent combat readiness evaluation and your level of knowledge scores and your audit and surveillance program don't mean a thing if you get killed first. And if you end up on the losing side of a torpedo, it teaches another lesson. It teaches you that you have to be adaptable. It teaches you that sometimes the tactic doesn't work and you have to flex. Sometimes dynamic maneuver is what's going to save the day. And I think that raw, elemental, competitive environment is critical for seeding innovation and tactical development. As you know, we have graybeards in all of our major fleet concentration areas now. And what the graybeards are telling me with this competition is training is it's significantly changing the way our COs and wardrooms and senior enlisted are approaching trainers. They're using the tactics certainly as guidelines, but they're also recognizing that if you aggressively maneuver, if you use deception, if you change your tactics sometimes, that actually provides a significant advantage. Unpredictability is as effective as following the tactic in many cases to having success in the trainers. So we're developing good judgment and effective survival tools as a part of that, and I think it's very positive. In closing, our submarine force remains a cornerstone of our competitive advantage over China and Russia and any other would-be competitor in the maritime environment. We're sprinting to preserve that advantage in our submarine shipbuilding, in our new weapon systems and sensors development, in the use of unmanned systems, and in development of combat-ready, effective, competent sailors. I promise you I intend to keep it that way on my watch. So with that, I'm going to pause and stand by for any questions. Before I do, I just wanted to seed a couple items that you may have heard about recently, just let you know, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that I might know about it. If you're not aware, the CNO, I guess about a month or 2 months ago now, released a tri-service maritime strategy. Well, yesterday at Service Navy Association brief, the CNO released his navigation plan for 2021. And I think what you're going to find if you looked at Commander's Intent 3.0 and you put it up beside the navigation plan, they're very, very closely aligned. And we had seen the draft of that as we were developing Commander's Intent 3.0. But like submariners, we wanted to be the first to the fight, so we just went ahead and put ours out ahead of time. We didn't want to delay getting guidance out to the fleet. So that's good. That's useful to have that navigation plan. It's a high-level strategic document. It's unclassified and it's available on the internet, and you can go ahead and take a look at that. I've seen it distributed by a number of vets that I'm on their email correspondence with. So I'd invite you to take a look at that if you're interested. And I expect then we'll have a strategy for implementation that will follow that in the next 2 or 3 months. And that'll probably be at the classified level, and we'll be involved in development of that. We have some great operations going on. This year, we deployed Seawolf to the Atlantic to do a series of very important national missions. We deployed Georgia into CENTCOM from the land, and she's out there now doing some very important operations in CENTCOM. I mentioned to you that I think we're making progress in the budget, and the recent budgets have been very, very positive for the submarine force. I think that's because the recent future Naval Force structure studies have highlighted the critical demand for more and more fast attack submarines in a high-end fight, whether it be against China or Russia. And our Navy is responding with that to ensure we build enough Virginia class and we start following on with the next generation of fast attack submarine. We call it SSNX. A faster submarine, perhaps deeper diving, more survivable with a larger payload. And the larger payload is the biggest design factor that we really need. And then probably near and dear to some of your hearts there, because it's co-located with Squadron 11, is our Undersea Rescue Command is alive and well. If you look out across the water from Point Loma, you'll see we got some construction going out there for them, which is positive. And they've had some recent successes supporting some unfortunate events with the Marine Corps as well with the remotely operated vehicle. So they're doing some great work. And you know, on a separate item, you know, we're going about a process, and I think we've released the 4th tranche of documents on the Thresher, and declassified and released those for dissemination, and so that's available out there. So with that, I'll pause. That's all the news that's fit to print in the submarine force, And I'm standing by for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Do you have access to chat? I know there's at least one question up on the chat now.
I do. Let me call up my chat screen here. Can you call that up for me?
Yeah, I think there's a question from Bill on the Montana.
Okay, the question is, what message would you want to convey to the leaders, crews, and families about their role in the defense of our nation and people? Hey, the role I would tell you is this. Our submarine force, and especially our fast attack nuclear submarines, are going to be the first to the fight in a major maritime conflict. Our submarine force's performance in the early phases of any major maritime conflict is going to set the pace for what happens in the future. And if we won't win that fight, the rest of the joint force may not get to the fight. So I think the role is critical to our national security. We also play an important role, as I mentioned, in providing the show of force and the dominance in the undersea domain that I think tips the balance in the calculus that will tell China and Russia today is not a good day to show aggression, to be belligerent, and to approach a level of conflict that they can't step back from with the United States of America. So that's the message I would send to them.
Hey, oh good. We're getting a question from Tim Oliver.
Yeah, please go ahead, Tim. Oh wait, we got a question from a midshipman as well. Standing by for any of them. I got a blog effort. What efforts are being used to maximize the lobbying efforts to fund development for submarine development? Well, I can't speak to the lobbying efforts, and if I could, I shouldn't anyways. But what I can tell you is that we have a concerted effort within the submarine force to ensure that we, that is the submarine force leadership, and our N97 resource sponsor are all very closely linked in the importance of the Virginia class, the value of refueling a select number of Los Angeles class submarines to maintain our numbers now, all while we're developing advanced capabilities for the next generation of submarine. And that means resourcing the research and development efforts for SSNX. Because when you look at the fight, and especially when you look at the shipbuilding capacity that a nation like China brings to the fight, we're not going to build more submarines than them. We're going to struggle with our capacity if we try and go sub to sub. If we develop submarines that are highly capable and we expand their reach and we have higher payloads on each one of our submarines and we maintain the advantage in stealth, then we're in the fight. And that's why when we talk about SSNX, we need a larger payload. We need a submarine that's faster, more responsive, as stealthy, if not stealthier than the Virginia class, but certainly with a larger payload and more speed. And we've done the numbers, and we've provided at very highly classified levels some vignettes for our resource sponsor to demonstrate why the speed matters and why the payload capacity matters so dearly in support of our operational plans.
Great, Admiral. One thing I skipped over at the first was we do have some midshipmen on the call. I want to thank Lieutenant Wooten from USD for joining us today as well with some of the midshipmen. I think Midshipman Boo had a question. Do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask the question?
Yes, sir. My name is Midshipman Doi, like the flotation device. But I was interested in asking what is like the Navy's potential plan or interest in bringing out these ideals and concepts to the civilian sector, because as we've seen before with previous conflicts, especially in Vietnam, when there isn't a strong support for an engagement, it can end up pulling out troops or support, and that drastically affects our national policy and things like that.
Well, that's I think that we do more probably in the submarine force than we ever have in the past in terms of community and strategic engagement, and we can do that because social media affords us the opportunity to do that via Facebook, via Twitter, and so forth. And we try and highlight, without giving away the farm, you know, areas where we're out there operating today, and we're doing it in a manner that's not belligerent, that's not aggressive, but that's demonstrating our presence, that's demonstrating our willingness to operate forward and deter adversary aggression. In fact, if you looked on Twitter today, we had some pictures of USS Ohio operating out of Guam and conducting operations. Obviously, a very capable strategic asset with the number of TLAMs and the SEAL delivery capability she provides. So I think we do engage with the public, you know, probably as much or more than we ever have. I think one of the other more powerful things that we can do in terms of our ideals is make sure that the folks that are in the Navy and the folks that we send out from the Navy that have previous service veterans, they leave with the understanding that even if they decided not to make the Navy and the submarine force a career, it is a fine way to start off your life. And there can be no better grounding in the principles of individual responsibility, accountability, honor, courage, and commitment. And I think that says a lot more than any tweet or any Facebook post that we can provide. And it is much more impactful to have those folks that have been in the Navy and they've seen our unwavering principles, and they've seen the way we conduct ourselves and our commitment, and they take that out into the civilian world. So that's what I would tell you. Probably not wholly satisfying, but we do have a strategic engagement plan. We align it with the Navy and the Joint Forces Strategic Engagement Plan. But we also have to be very careful that, you know, our job is defending the United States, and we have to put our time and resources primarily in that effort.
Got it. Thank you, Admiral.
Admiral, I noticed Tim Oliver sent me a message, but didn't send it to the broader audience. His question is, how's coordination with the Japanese submarines, and is there any sense that they may extend the life of their diesel boats?
I don't know about extending the life. We'll take that second question, but it's certainly a good question. I'll have to talk to Butch DeLaga out there at CTF-74 next time I talk to him. I do know that they're putting, they fielded lithium batteries on their diesel boats, and I'm very interested in understanding how the performance of that and the safety factors and what they're experiencing from that, because we're not gonna build diesel electric submarines in any time in the future, but if that lithium ion technology works, that's a great opportunity for our UUVs to extend the ranges and stuff. And so we're researching that and very interested in that. We work very closely with the Japanese. We also work very closely with the Australians and the South Koreans. All of them have capable submarine forces. I'm very interested in expanding that cooperation, so it's not just in peacetime exercises, but in shows of force, but also finding opportunities to work closely and introduce them to what we would expect them to do if we were to go in jointly in major combat operations. So we can use the unique value and advantages of the diesel electric submarine and some of their ASW capable warships to complement the things that we bring to the table from our submarine response plan, from our fast attack submarines flowing into theater. And I think that there's a lot of areas where that complementary effort would provide very complex, wicked problems for the Chinese and the Russians. So we are working those efforts. Obviously, there's always challenges in terms of what you can and can't release and so forth, but they're very close partners. We work with them continuously, and I think our relationship is as strong as ever.
Great. I think the next question was from Stephen Walsh. Do you see that on the chat?
Let me see if I can find that one. I may have to put my glasses on for this, the chat. Oh yeah. The release of the Thresher NCOI information provides a missing why subsafe structure is structured as it is. Are people being encouraged to review this information? Absolutely. I will tell you that, and I don't think I'm unique. We go back and do a history lesson on subsafe, the founding of the subsafe program, why we did it, the value of it and importance every year on our submarine force within the folks that take part in the subsafe program. I used to give that training personally as a commanding officer, and before that as an XO and an engineer. And I did that for two reasons. Number one, I was a QA officer, and I recognized the value and importance of that program from a very early time as a JO. And the second reason is because my next door neighbor growing up in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, a guy named Mr. Johnson, I don't even remember his first name, but I do remember the name of his son. It was Thomas Benjamin Johnson. He was an ET-1 on the Thresher. And when I got commissioned as an ensign, Mr. Johnson, who I used to go over and I used to cut his lawn, and for a while he taught me how to do some woodworking. He gave me the Navy cover and some insignia from his son and from his time in the Navy as thanks for joining the Navy and kind of just to keep in mind and keep in memory his son who was lost on the Thresher. So it kind of near and dear to my heart, the impact. And I remember in my high school, and I didn't realize why it was there until Mr. Johnson had given me this stuff when I was commissioned as an ensign in the submarine force. But there was a picture of the Atlantic Ocean in a heavy stormy day, and it was empty. There wasn't a ship, and it was in memory of ET-1 Thomas Johnson. And it sat in our library, and the picture was probably a 4-foot by about an 8-foot picture that his parents had commissioned when the Thresher was lost. So, I think us talking about that, telling those stories, and explaining the value proposition of the subsafe program, but also a number of the other things that we've done in terms of operating procedures and reactor safety and propulsion plant continuity of operations that we've integrated are all critical lessons that we take away. And I do think we still do a good job of teaching our young officers and our young sailors those.
Okay. Fred had a question on how is the personnel pipeline doing? Do we project having enough sailors in the future?
We're actually very healthy in manning right now. I'm blessed to be SUBPAC when our manning is as healthy as it is. We've done a good job. And even with the COVID challenges, we haven't seen a substantial drop in retention at this point. And I think, certainly a part of that is we're not going to see that for some time. I think the other piece to that, and maybe this is more me hoping, but I think that our sailors are recognized the critical importance of the missions that they do today. And if I could talk to you about the details of the submarine missions, for example, the Scranton just got back from, and our submarines are out there doing today, and the high demand signal and the incredible delivery of complete missions that these guys are providing, just from across the board, from engaging with the Chinese, engaging with the Russian, operating in very challenging areas, conducting really, really important national missions to add to our understanding of the environment. They're doing some incredible work out there, and they're doing it at a pace that is almost unheard of because there's not a lot of places we can pull in due to the COVID challenges. And it's not because our folks are infected or anything. It's just that, there's just not a lot of port calls enabled for anybody in the Pacific or Atlantic right now. So, but with that, I think our sailors are coming back, and they recognize there is an end in sight as we go through the vaccination regime and so forth. And they also see the value that they've provided to our nation. And I hope that persists, and I hope we can use that to continue to encourage retention. We are having some challenges in JO retention that I mentioned, and we have a concerted effort across the submarine force to work on that. There's just a lot of opportunities for our very skilled JOs right now in industry.
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, I guess I'd like to ask, what's the impact been of opening up the sub force to women on the boats now?
So the impact, first from officers, which we did first, I want to say in 2012, and then from enlisted. The impact has been huge, and it's been positive. We've dramatically opened the aperture on the what officers we can bring in. And what we're finding is we did it in a manner that we didn't open the floodgates. We did it in a manner that was manageable and that minimized the risk of untoward events and pushback on the submarine force. And frankly, we brought in very, very high quality, high caliber female officers from the Naval Academy, from our ROTC units. And the result was, we value technical competence above anything else in the submarine force. And these women came in and they were highly technical competent, and they were immediately accepted in the ranks. And we're seeing the same thing from the enlisted side. So I think the pace that we integrated with was right. We're seeing very, very high quality officers coming in. In fact, we're rejecting officers coming in because we can only bring in so many based on the number of ships that we have converted and so forth. They're performing very well. In fact, the retention rate is substantially higher in the submarine force than we're seeing even from our nuclear trained officers in the surface fleet, which is kind of what we modeled, what we'd expect retention based on, and we're seeing a much better retention rate than that. So I think it's all positive. We don't have as much track history on the enlisted women in submarines, but haven't had any substantial problems. And when I go out and see these boats operating, they're performing great.
Great. I think Jim Bryan had a question about should the Navy release more information on what submarines did during the Cold War?
That's a great question. I think we have to be careful and deliberate, but there may be some opportunities. That's kind of out of my swim lane on this one, so I'd probably defer to the folks up at OpNav on where they're at. But I will tell you that while doing the platforms are different, but many of the tactics, many of the techniques, and many of the specific national mission operations that we did then, we still do today. And I wouldn't want to go too far and give away the way we operate, because it's not that far removed. And many of you that operated submarines in the 70s and 80s would be pleasantly surprised that we're still doing the same things in the same areas today. So that I think there may be an opportunity. OpNav is going to have to make that decision, but we do have to be judicious to make sure we don't give away the farm on that.
Okay, Dr. Lawrence had a question. I don't know if you see it on your list there.
I'm looking at a question from Mr. Walsh. He talked about torpedo tube launch and recovery UUVs. Do dry dock shelters factor in this scenario as well? Absolutely. So in fact, we're farther ahead on dry dock shelter UUV delivery. And we do real world operations with unmanned underwater vehicles operating out of dry dock shelters today. We obviously operate SEAL delivery vehicles out of dry dock shelters as well. We are experimenting. We can launch a UUV out of a torpedo tube. We have for many, many years. To launch and recover them consistently and then be able to recharge them shipboard and reuse them. That's what we're working on, and we've run a number of experiments. We've done it at sea, and now we're getting to the point where over the next year or two, I hope to transition to a program of record delivery of torpedo tube launch and recovery UUVs that will enable us to get a number of submarines with that capability, and then start providing a template for a modular package design so folks can start delivering packages of sensors or lethality gear or what have you to take to sea and put on those UUVs to deliver more capabilities. So that's where we're at on that.
Okay. Let's see. I know Ray Frobisher had a question about with the Chinese building icebreakers and declared intentions to operate in the Arctic. What are we looking beyond ISEX?
So what I will tell you is that we operate under the ice much more than just for ISEX, and we continue to do that. So while ISEX is a great opportunity to do tactical development and to publicize the work that we do, we have a number of other events that we do throughout the year that requires operations under the ice, and we exercise that frequently. And we exercise it for transits on occasion as well, because it's a great route to develop proficiency at, so that we can use those routes during real world conflicts when we want to get somewhere quick. So a lot of opportunities there. I think our submarine force has always been under the Arctic, and we're going to remain there.
Okay, great. Let's see, Dr. Lawrence asked a question about, glad to hear about the attack trainers are more flexible in what they will allow. His ancient experience was that the moment you deviated from the doctrine or litany, the training was shut off by the instructors. What unusual situations have you heard of coming out of the trainers?
So my guidance and the guidance that we've provided to all of our PAC trainers is absolutely the opposite. Frankly, you know, other than obviously you do have to have some scoring to enable you to determine if two guys are doing a surface action group attack, two submariners, you know, and they both survive and they both hit some of their targets, you want to, whoever hit the most tonnage or whatever hit the most high value targets first, will win. So we do need some template for scoring, but we push away from, did you follow the tactics, and we drive them very much towards, did you meet the objective or you didn't? And in some cases, you might have not used the right tactic and gotten lucky. And we certainly want to debrief you on that. But if you got lucky and you won, you won. And we actually have incorporated some considerations where we actually have provided adversary tactics and adversary weapon systems and probabilities of effectiveness, and we roll the dice with them, and we know what the probabilities are, but there's a dice roll that determines whether, based on that adversary torpedo capabilities, you know, 4 of you know, 6 times maybe you'll evade, and 2 out of the 6 you won't. And so we'll figure that out and then make a determination. So there's luck involved, and the strategy is to minimize the opportunities where the adversary can use luck to their advantage. If they can't detect you and they never shoot at you, then you don't have to worry about a dice roll and an adversary torpedo that hit you. If you have an effective evasion plan, maybe it never gets within range, so you don't have to worry about the dice roll. All of those things that go towards removing risk or removing luck as a factor from your engagements are important. And the other value that we found, and probably the most significant finding that I mentioned, is aggressive maneuvering and speed and dynamic weapons employment matters. What we found is the first tranche of folks that went into the trainer were very conservatively employing the tactics, and they were getting crushed. And now what we're finding is guys are driving their submarines like race cars, and they're recognizing that stealth is a trade space, and stealth is valuable, but if you preserve stealth and you never shoot at the target, then you don't win. And if you find the opportunities where you need to use stealth and the other opportunities where you can sacrifice it for short periods of time in favor of rapid maneuvering and getting into position and shooting first, maybe that's the right trade in that engagement. You know, obviously it's never right if you get killed, but so we kind of incorporated those factors as well, and those lessons are being learned by our COs, and hopefully that'll prepare them better, God forbid, if they have to go into conflict.
Okay, great. Jeff Fishbeck has the question, what realities, if any, do you see in the Marine Corps' ASW plan?
That's going to depend on what missiles we give them, I guess. Here's what I will tell you. The Marine Corps, they needed to change their MO, right? They needed to make it relevant and make themselves relevant to great power competition. So I do see some value in that. I do see some opportunities because, as I said, I simply can't take enough torpedoes and get them into the fight as soon as I'd like to. And if we have opportunities with all the range of assets we have in the joint world to put some ground-launched missiles, containerized missiles that I can provide third-party targeting to that could shut off the Luzon Strait, or you name the Basilan Strait, or whatever it is, wherever we can put them, shore-based, but with some external targeting capability, I've just reduced the risk that I'm facing to our surface forces, to our aircraft carrier strike groups, and to our submarines by enabling that. And certainly there's a lot of low value targets I don't want to take out, and I don't want to waste a heavyweight ADCAP torpedo on, but an NSM would be a great weapon system to use, or maybe a harpoon or something relatively inexpensive ground launch missile that I can target and put there with third-party targeting. So I see some value there. We have to refine the tactics, and the Marine Corps is working very aggressively with our Navy Special Forces to do that, and we're working with them to help them out on that. So from that perspective, I think there's some there. Right now, NSM's the only missiles they have. I think they're looking for some other opportunities.
Okay, great. And let's see, the last question I currently see is from retired Admiral Stephen Loeffler. His question is, Naval Postgraduate School has a new certificate program on great power competition. Would that be beneficial for your officers, especially since it provides master's degree credit for future use towards a degree in national security? It's something they can provide symmetrically or asymmetrically for submariners on shore duty.
Yeah, you know, that is very attractive. I would tell you that I believe it was 2 SECNAVs ago now, but a previous SECNAV instituted a requirement that necessitates a schoolhouse level master's degree eventually in your career path. So it doesn't count if it's been all online or what have you. So any of those programs, if we can shape it sufficiently, it doesn't have to be all in the schoolhouse, even if it's a couple weeks or something, that we can get credit for that as the master's that counts. I think for obviously for making flag or for whatever major command or whatever the stipulations are, that would even make it more attractive to our submarine officers, because they're going to be over the next several years recognizing this responsibility. And our career path's so tight that it's really hard to get everybody off to the Navy War College or MPS to do that.
And let's see, I see we have another question from our Executive Director, Tim Oliver. How can the submarine force help the naval shipyards get submarines out faster?
So the NAVSEA has a performance to plan effort that's in place, and we take part of that in the working groups that is looking at, has an outside activity, I think it's Paulson Consulting Group, looking at their overall data and trying to divine areas for improvement from that perspective. I think a different approach, a bottom-up approach, is also critical, and I've been encouraging our shipyard commanders and providing support from my end to do that, and that is, we need to go back and we need to look at the individual jobs from the bottom up. You need to take a look at a shaft change out, something that we've been doing for 30, 40, 50 years, and go back and look at the work packages and look at the safety things that we do and look at the work controls and look at the number of workers we put into that and the amount of planning, and understand why does it take 3 times as many man days to do the same job today as it did, and where's the value added in terms of safety or reliability of that work in those additional hours. Because frankly, we have yet to ever see in a depot maintenance period a learning curve that shows that we're getting faster. Can you think of, do you ever see our design Los Angeles class depot maintenance periods? I want to say it was initially designed for 19.7 months, and now it's 26, 27 months, at least on average, some of them extending much further. That's not the kind of learning curve I would like to see. I would like to see us actually get faster, and we're not doing that. And so that means the rate of growth of things like oversight and new requirements is faster than our learning. or we're just not learning. So I think that bottom-up approach needs to be partnered with the P2P, and I've been working with NAVC to do that.
Okay, let's see. Fred just popped in with a question. Are there any Liar's Dice cups left at the bar?
You know, I don't know if they are. I haven't looked recently, but they may be behind the bar, but they're not sitting on it right now. But I will definitely look. That's a great question. I will tell you, I wish I could give you a quick tour because it is great. And we host a number of social events here, more before COVID, but hopefully here as we go through the vaccination effort, we'll be able to get our COs back in here on a more frequent basis. But this is just a great opportunity here in our skipper's lounge and our clean sweep bar to get together. And there's a lot of great old pictures on the walls of our former submariners through the ages, not just from World War II.
Great. So I have one last question. At the 2019 Submarine Symposium, Admiral Richards made a comment about merging the Undersea Rescue Command with the Underwater Vehicle Group. Is that still something that's in progress, or did that die out?
So we were looking at that really aggressively, and that's actually, it was one of the courses of action that we evaluated when we were looking at some restructuring within the force. And part of that effort is still ongoing, but what we decided rather than to do that is we kind of beefed up our UUV run and we put our extra large unmanned underwater vehicle squadron underneath UUV run. And we made the decision that we're gonna defer moving those for right now and look towards the future at where we finally home base our extra large unmanned underwater vehicles, which are going to be a platform we use for delivering offensive mines. We have 4 of them that are scheduled to be delivered. First one's supposed to get here in 22 and all 5 of them before 24, 25. And then we're going to be forward basing them. And we haven't decided where to do that yet. We have a study that's reading out into the strategic laydown for 2021, and the CNO will be making that decision. So, you know, I can't talk more about it, but we are looking at forward basing options for them. And then that will, once we decide where we're going to base them, that'll decide the command and control structure we use for those and how we structure UUV run. So for right now, we're going to keep URC and UUV run separate until we make that decision. And URC, we are making some minor changes in terms of, you know, the leadership and stuff that Patrick Friedman can talk to. But frankly, I think we got the right leadership team in place right now, and we got a good strategy to get healthy in undersea rescue with them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Admiral, very much. I'd like to everybody give the Admiral a round of applause. You did a fantastic talk, and we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We will be sending you a copy of the mains hall from the Maritime Museum of San Diego. It's the edition of A Century of Submarines in San Diego. It was put together with Subron 11 and members of the maritime staff and the Naval Submarine League. In fact, I think Jeff Fishback and Noah was involved deeply in it, as were several other of our members, and we'll be getting that out to you ASAP, but Charlie takes care of that for us. And again, we want to thank you for taking the time for meeting with us and answering all our questions.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks for the great questions.
Sure. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up or ask me before we conclude the meeting?
Just run silent, run deep.
Okay, and I want to thank Tim Oliver for joining us and all the other members from out of town in the Pacific Northwest. I also want to remind everybody that our next meeting is on February 9th. And again, we will have, the topic will be women in submarines from the perspective of 2 pioneers, the 2 pioneers being Commander Lindsay Anderson, who actually just received official notification yesterday of a promotion to commander. And I think I see Lindsay's on the call, so congratulations on that. And she'll talk about her experiences on the USS Georgia. And Lieutenant Andrea Howard, who's currently on the Ohio. And that'll be again moderated by Captain retired Babette Lowndes. See if anybody else has anything else. We want to again urge you to take care of yourself, continue to monitor the state of COVID pandemic, and continue to adherence to the CDC guidelines. Wear those masks and get those shots as soon as you can. And we look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday, February 9th. And have a great week and a great rest of the month.
Thank you for allowing some of us to join in with your group. It was very interesting.
You're absolutely welcome.